In today's NFL, star power is strategy. You can't just coach football anymore. You have to curate storylines, manage media cycles, and sell the brand of your team like it's a Netflix original. Quarterbacks aren't just signal callers. They're frontmen, content creators, and sometimes the entire marketing plan. And that's what makes Kevin Stefanski's decision to demote Shedeur Sanders to QB3 such an unforced disaster. Because in a league that thrives on spectacle, Shedeur isn't just another young QB. He's the moment. A ready-made icon with Deion Sanders' DNA, a built-in fan base, and enough media gravity to tilt the entire league's attention toward Cleveland, a place that usually only trends when it's snowing sideways or another coach gets fired. But instead of leaning into that momentum, Stefanski slammed the brakes. And not subtly either. He benched Shedeur and leapfrogged him with Dillon Gabriel, a solid rookie, but nowhere near the media magnet Sanders is. And to make matters worse, Joe Flacco, who just carried this team's offense out of ICU last season, is out of the picture entirely. It's a depth chart shuffle that makes no sense unless you completely ignore how the modern NFL actually operates.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Let's not kid ourselves. This league is built on stars. The NFL has spent years grooming Sanders as the next generational face of the franchise model. From college coverage to social media buzz, the Shedeur Sanders hype machine was humming along perfectly. And Stefanski just pulled the plug. It didn't take long for the blowback to begin. Roger Goodell usually measured to a fault, went public with his criticism, calling out Stefanski for what amounts to brand sabotage. That's not just rare, it's unheard of. When the commissioner has to step in and defend the entertainment value of your quarterback room, something's gone horribly off script. And here's the thing, Stefanski isn't some rogue coach on a bad team with nothing to lose. He's a respected guy, a playoff caliber leader, which makes this whole thing even more bizarre. What was the plan? Win games while silencing your most marketable asset? Turn the Browns into a winning team nobody wants to watch? Shedeur's not just a quarterback. He's a storyline, a sponsorship magnet, a weekly talking point. And right now, he's wasting away on the sideline, watching a franchise gamble away the attention he brings like it's worth nothing. And for what? To stick to football? In this league? If Stefanski thought the football would speak for itself, he forgot that in 2025, the NFL doesn't just tell stories, it sells them. And nobody wants to buy whatever this mess is. Now the Browns are left with chaos. The league is scrambling and Stefanski? He's gone from steady-handed coach to full-blown antagonist in the NFL's latest off-field drama. The quarterback carousel in Cleveland has gone from chaotic to completely unhinged. Dillon Gabriel is stepping in for Joe Flacco, and Shedeur Sanders, the most high-profile rookie in the league, has somehow been pushed down to QB3. And the man responsible? Kevin Stefanski. This isn't just a poor coaching decision. It's a strategic failure with league-wide implications. Because in today's NFL, quarterbacks are no longer just players, they're assets. And Shedeur Sanders isn't just any asset. He's the centerpiece of a full-blown marketing campaign. The NFL has been building his image, his brand, and his fan base since before he took his first snap. And Stefanski just tossed all of that aside like it was a preseason depth chart. The optics couldn't be worse. Let's be clear, there was no injury, no off-field scandal, no meltdown, no on-field collapse that justified demoting Shedeur to QB3. In fact, there was no real explanation at all. And that silence? It said everything. It left a vacuum, one the media was more than happy to fill. In the span of hours, a routine roster shift spiraled into a full-blown media circus. Not because of the move itself, but because of who it involved. Because when you sideline Shedeur Sanders, you're not just adjusting personnel, you're making a statement. And the statement Stefanski made was tone-deaf, outdated, and completely misaligned with how the modern NFL operates. This league doesn't just run on talent anymore. It runs on narrative. It runs on star power. It runs on players who bring in viewers, drive engagement, and give the league a storyline. And Shedeur has all of that. He's not just a quarterback. He's one of the most recognizable rookies in the NFL. His presence elevates the broadcast. His jersey sells. His interviews trend. He's the league's golden child. Or, at least, he was. Until Kevin Stefanski benched him with no explanation, tanking one of the league's most valuable storylines in the process. And the fallout was immediate. The public perception of Stefanski flipped overnight, from competent and consistent to careless and disconnected. And the narrative around Shedeur? It shifted from the future of the franchise to the forgotten star, cast aside by a coach who refused to play the game the league has clearly embraced. Protect the brand, protect the face, protect the asset. It got so bad that Roger Goodell stepped in himself. That almost never happens. But this wasn't about football. It was about damage control. It was about managing the fallout from a head coach who went rogue and disrupted a storyline the NFL had carefully spent months building. And let's not minimize what Goodell's involvement means. The commissioner isn't a strategist. He's not reviewing playbooks. He's managing narrative alignment. When he publicly criticizes a coach, especially one as non-flashy as Stefanski, it's a sign that the decision has breached more than just team strategy. It's disrupted the business. Because yes, the NFL is still a sport, but it's also a product. And Shedeur Sanders is one of its top-selling features. And Stefanski? He fumbled that. Hard. The decision to bench Shedeur, and not just bench him, but drop him to third string, wasn't just unnecessary. It was reckless. It made no sense on paper. No sense in the locker room. No sense to the media. And absolutely no sense to the league's business model. It showed a complete lack of awareness about where the NFL is headed, and how much narrative now shapes competition. Because let's be real, the NFL has fully embraced the shift from athletic contest to televised drama. Coaching decisions are no longer internal mechanics. They are public-facing content. Every starter named, every snap taken, every press conference quote. It's all part of the show. And when you bench one of the show's stars without cause, you don't just lose games. You lose control. Kevin Stefanski lost control. And in doing so, he didn't just hurt Shedeur Sanders. He hurt the Browns. He hurt the league. And he hurt his own standing as a coach. Because now the conversation isn't about whether Shedeur will bounce back. He will. It's not about whether he'll get another shot. He will. The conversation now is about whether Stefanski even understands the league he's coaching in. And the answer? Not anymore. Because this isn't 2010. This isn't an era where you can bury a young QB for the sake of veteran presence and expect the media to move on. You can't make a move like this without triggering a media storm. You can't sit a player like Shedeur without being accused of sabotaging a league investment. And you definitely can't do it without giving a reason, especially when the league is staking its image on this player. But that's exactly what Stefanski did. And now he's dealing with the consequences. Rightfully so. Because Shedeur Sanders was being groomed for stardom. And instead of nurturing that development, Stefanski tanked it. The league didn't overreact. It responded the only way it could to protect its image. And what that response shows is that coaching autonomy is no longer absolute. Not when it conflicts with the league's entertainment-first model. Not when it undermines its most valuable faces. This isn't paranoia. This is business. The NFL has shown its cards. Protect the stars, preserve the brand, and punish the people who threaten either. Coaches can't pretend they're above that. And Stefanski, for some reason, thought he could operate in a vacuum. That he could make a quiet call and walk away. But the second you drop a player like Shedeur to QB3, you're not just tinkering with a game plan. You're interfering with the show. And the NFL doesn't tolerate showrunners who go off script. What makes this even worse is that Shedeur did everything right. No scandal. No poor sportsmanship. No lazy play. He showed up, did his job, kept his head down, and got punished for it. Now, thanks to Stefanski, he's the sympathetic figure in a league that's always looking for heroes and villains. And make no mistake, Stefanski made himself the villain. It wasn't the league. It wasn't the fans. It wasn't the media. It was him. His call. His silence. His complete inability to read the room. And now he's alone in it. So what now? The damage is done. The narrative is locked. Shedeur is the star in waiting. The league will absolutely bring him back, whether it's this season, next season, or on another team entirely. That comeback is guaranteed. It will be packaged, promoted, and pushed. Stefanski? Not so much. This will follow him, no matter how the Browns finish the season. No matter what excuse he gives in hindsight. He'll be remembered as the coach who benched the league's biggest rookie storyline. The one who decided to play old school ball in a new school league. And he'll be paying for that decision long after the last down is played. The NFL is no longer about who earns the spot. It's about who holds the story. And Shedeur Sanders is the story. Kevin Stefanski just chose to ignore that. And that's the one decision he'll never be allowed to forget. Now it's your turn. Was Kevin Stefanski justified, or did he just make one of the worst strategic mistakes in modern coaching history? Should star power influence coaching choices? Or is that just the way the NFL works now? Drop your take in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll be here every week to unpack every fumble, fallout, and PR disaster the league throws at us. This isn't just about who's under-centered next week for the Cleveland Browns. This is a full-blown collision between an outdated coaching philosophy and a billion-dollar marketing machine. And right now, Kevin Stefanski is standing directly in the blast radius of both. Because let's be clear, Shedeur Sanders didn't just fall to QB3. He was dropped there inexplicably, silently, and with a level of disregard that you just don't see anymore. Not when a player is being groomed as the future face of the league. Not when the NFL itself is investing its brand capital into making that player the next household name. That's what makes this different. That's why this has escalated beyond football. This wasn't a strategic switch. This was a disruption of the narrative. And if you've been paying attention, the NFL has made one thing very clear in recent years. Don't mess with the narrative. The NFL today is driven by three things: star power, storyline, and spectacle. The actual sport? It still matters, but it's now just one part of a bigger entertainment ecosystem. Players aren't just athletes. They're media figures, branding tools, cultural lightning rods. And Shedeur Sanders fits perfectly into that mold. He checks every box the league craves in a rising star. Visibility? Through the roof. Cultural relevance? Built in. Marketability? Elite. On top of that, he hasn't done anything wrong. No locker room drama. No performance issues that justify a fall like this. He's done everything right, and he still got buried. That's the part that makes people angry. And Kevin Stefanski? He's completely misread the room. He made a decision that may have been acceptable 10 years ago, back when coaching was still a private job and quarterbacks weren't treated like intellectual property. But in today's NFL, when you bench a star in the making, you're not just affecting your team. You're setting off alarms at league headquarters. The commissioner didn't get involved in this story because of box scores. Roger Goodell stepped in because this decision threatens the league's product. And Shedeur is part of that product. Stefanski didn't just demote a quarterback. He disrupted a league-wide marketing blueprint. That kind of mistake doesn't get a quiet slap on the wrist anymore. It gets you publicly corrected. And that's exactly what happened. Goodell's rare, pointed criticism of Stefanski wasn't about tactics. It wasn't about play calling. It was a very clear message to every other coach in the league. Stay in line. Promote the stars. Protect the story. Don't interrupt the production. Because that's what the NFL is now, a production. And this entire controversy proves just how fragile that production really is. It only took one coach, one decision, and one depth chart change to throw the whole system into chaos. That's not a sign of media hysteria. That's a sign of just how much the league depends on narrative control to function. And Shedeur? He's the perfect test case for how far the league is willing to go to protect its chosen stars. He didn't complain. He didn't lash out. He didn't start cryptic social media wars. He stayed silent, professional, poised. And that made the backlash even stronger. Because that silence? It was deafening. It made Stefanski's move look petty, arrogant, unjustified. It amplified the perception that this wasn't about football. It was about ego, about control, about a coach trying to send a message in a league that no longer tolerates messages that conflict with its core branding. That's the dynamic playing out right now. Stefanski thought he was still the main authority on his roster. He thought he could bench a rising star and not have to answer for it beyond his own locker room. What he failed to grasp is that in the modern NFL, quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders don't belong to the team anymore. They belong to the league. They're assets in a broader entertainment ecosystem that stretches far beyond Cleveland. They're built into sponsorship deals, national ad campaigns, youth outreach, and streaming content partnerships. The NFL's investment in Shedeur wasn't just about his ability to throw a football. It was about his value as a cultural product. And Stefanski treated that like it didn't matter. That's why this won't blow over. Because the league doesn't care if a coach wants to develop talent on his own terms. It cares if that development undermines its terms. And burying Shedeur Sanders on the depth chart without a football-based justification is about as flagrant a violation of that unspoken rule as it gets. Now Stefanski is paying the price. Not officially, yet. But the writing is on the wall. The public perception has turned. The commissioner has spoken. The media has already decided who the villain is in this storyline. And it's not Shedeur. That's the real damage here. Stefanski didn't just lose the locker room or the playbook. He lost the benefit of the doubt. And once that's gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. Especially in a league that feeds on controversy, churns through storylines, and is always looking for the next scapegoat to keep the cameras rolling. Right now, Stefanski is that scapegoat. And Shedeur? He's the tragic hero. The benched prodigy. The misunderstood talent buried for reasons no one can quite explain. It's a storyline so effective, the league didn't even have to write it. Kevin Stefanski did it for them. And what's most frustrating about all of this is that it didn't have to happen. Shedeur didn't need to be the starter. No one was demanding that. But making him QB3? That was excessive. That was deliberate. That was hostile to the structure the league had spent months carefully building. He could have stayed QB2. He could have had limited reps. The story could have been that he was developing at his own pace, protected, supported, positioned for a strong debut later in the season. But now he's the face of a manufactured crisis. The media cycle is locked in. Every question about Stefanski's leadership is now framed through the lens of this decision. Every evaluation of the Browns' future now includes a subtext about Shedeur's absence. Every post-game discussion comes back to the quarterback room. And what the hell is going on inside of it? This is the power of narrative. And Stefanski has lost control of it. Completely. There's no recovery path that doesn't include walking back this decision. And when that walk back eventually happens, because it will, it's going to come with the same polished PR language the NFL always uses when it tries to rewrite a story on the fly. Shedeur responded like a pro. He needed time to develop. We're excited about where he is. But we'll all know what really happened. A coach made a decision he thought was about football. And the league reminded him it was about business. This is where the NFL is now. And if coaches don't understand that, they'll keep making mistakes like this. Mistakes that get amplified, dissected, and weaponized. Because in the NFL of 2025, there's only one thing more dangerous than making a bad play call. Interrupting the storyline. Kevin Stefanski interrupted the storyline, and the league made sure everyone saw what happened next. At this point, the Browns aren't just dealing with a depth chart issue. They're dealing with a full-blown identity crisis. And the league is watching. Because the second Shedeur Sanders was demoted to QB3, the Cleveland Browns stopped being a football team and became a cautionary tale. Stefanski's decision didn't just shift quarterbacks, it broke trust. Trust between the fans and the team. Trust between the league and the coach. And, maybe most importantly, trust between the locker room and its leadership. Because whether or not Stefanski wants to admit it, these players see what's happening. They see who gets protected and who gets buried. They see the PR game for what it is. And when a player like Shedeur, who's done everything right, is punished without cause, it sends a clear message. Merit isn't what moves you forward anymore. Favor does. And that's toxic. You can't build team culture around that. You can't ask players to buy in when the rules shift based on who the coach feels like playing power games with. Especially when the player at the center of it is Shedeur Sanders, a guy who isn't just high profile, but high value. He's more than a quarterback. He's a walking endorsement, a media asset, a league darling. And he's sitting behind two guys who bring none of that to the table. One a veteran at the tail end of his career, the other a rookie who hasn't moved the needle outside Ohio. So what exactly was Stefanski trying to prove? That he's still in charge? That he's not going to be influenced by league politics? That the Browns are above the hype? Great. Now they're also at the center of a controversy that has nothing to do with winning games and everything to do with a coach clinging to the past in a league that's moved on without him. Because make no mistake, the NFL has changed, and Stefanski hasn't. And for a league built around adaptability, around evolution, around spectacle, that's not just inconvenient. It's unsustainable. The Browns aren't just losing media goodwill, they're hemorrhaging relevance. And that's a death sentence in a league that revolves around clicks, views, and narratives. And here's the kicker. None of this had to happen. If Stefanski had just played it smarter, kept Shedeur as QB2, leaned into the league's messaging, maintained the illusion of development, he could have kept everyone happy. Fans, media, league executives. No backlash. No commissioner statements. No controversy. But instead, he made it personal. He made a statement. He benched the NFL's most marketable rookie, with no explanation, and watched the league light up around him like he had committed football treason. Because that's how it's being treated. Like a betrayal of the league's direction. A betrayal of the product. And even if Stefanski doesn't care about the product, everyone else does. From the owners, to the sponsors, to the networks broadcasting his games. The NFL has made itself very clear. This league is about storytelling now. And when you bench the protagonist without cause, you don't just disrupt a team. You disrupt the entire plot. So now the Browns are stuck in a storyline they can't escape. One where Shedeur is the sympathetic figure, the silent star, the backup no one asked for. And Stefanski is the outdated coach who thought he could outcoach the narrative and got publicly dragged instead. This isn't going away. Not when the league keeps investing in Shedeur's image. Not when the fans are demanding answers. Not when every analyst on every major sports network keeps asking the same question. What is Stefanski thinking? And the longer this drags on, the worse it gets. Because now, if Shedeur does get promoted later this season, it'll be seen as the league stepping in, as a forced course correction, as proof that the coach was wrong, and the NFL had to fix it. And if Stefanski doesn't reverse course, then the league looks weak for not protecting its stars. The brand takes a hit. The fans stay mad. And the Browns stay at the bottom of every headline, not because of football, but because of one coach's refusal to adapt. Either way, this ends in embarrassment. The only question is who takes the biggest hit when it's over. The franchise, the league, or Stefanski himself. But let's be honest. We already know who's holding the clipboard when this all ends, and it's not Shedeur Sanders. Let us know. Is this coaching incompetence or a rebellion against a league that's become too focused on brand over ball? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and stay locked in. Because in today's NFL, the scoreboard isn't the only place you can lose.